Imagine this. You've spent years being the supportive wife, standing quietly beside a man who swears he's the visionary, the dreamer, the leader. You cook, you organize, you cheer him on. You shrink yourself to make his world shine brighter. Then one day, over dinner, he smirks across the table and says, "Let's be honest, Zariah. You couldn't run a business if your life depended on it." And you just sit there, smiling, not because it's funny, but because deep down, something inside you clicks. You realize he's just made the biggest mistake of his life. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, where we tell powerful, true-to-life stories of love, betrayal, and sweet, elegant revenge. Before we dive into this one, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? And if you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever looked you in the eye and said you can't, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is for you. My name is Zariah Blake, and this is how my husband's little bet turned into a full-blown power shift that changed both our lives. He laughed when I said I wanted to start my own business. He said I'd fail in a week. He said I wasn't built for leadership. But what he didn't know was that while he was laughing, I was planning. And while he was underestimating me, I was already building something that would make him eat every word. By the end of this story, that same man, the one who used to call me his little helper, was standing in my office, resume in hand, asking for a job. So grab a seat, turn up the volume, and let me take you back to the night it all began, the night my husband placed a cruel little bet on my failure, and accidentally funded my empire. The restaurant was beautiful that night, golden chandeliers dripping light like honey, laughter echoing between the marble walls, wine glasses clinking softly. Zariah Blake sat across from her husband Darius at their favorite corner table, the one he always reserved for special occasions. But tonight didn't feel special, it felt staged. She wore a fitted emerald dress that glowed against her skin, her hair pinned up neatly, curls softly framing her elegant face. She had just finished telling Darius about an idea, a business she'd been sketching out in her planner for weeks. A creative marketing firm, one that would tell authentic stories for real people. She'd barely finished when Darius chuckled. "Babe," he said, swirling his drink, "you're adorable when you dream like that." Zariah blinked, her smile dimming. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. "You're amazing at home stuff. You plan parties, you handle the bills, you keep me grounded. But running a business, that's a different world." He said it with a teasing smile, the kind that would have sounded playful to a stranger, but to her, it felt like a slap wrapped in silk. Zariah set down her fork. "So you don't think I can?" "I think you're great at being you," he said smoothly. "But you're not built for that kind of pressure. Leave the business grind to people who what?" she interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. "Who have degrees, who've failed before and learned from it, who've been underestimated all their lives." He laughed again, sipping his wine. "I'm just saying, don't set yourself up. You wouldn't last a week." The table fell silent. Zariah looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd built a life with, the man she'd believed in through every late night, every lost client, every moment he doubted himself, and he was laughing at her. Something shifted in her chest, subtle but seismic. She smiled, slowly. "Is that a bet?" He grinned. "Sure, why not? I'll even give you startup money, but when you fail, and you will, I get to say I told you so forever." Her heart thudded, not from anger, from clarity. Zariah leaned forward, her eyes glinting beneath the soft light. "Deal," she said, "but when I win, you'll never use that tone with me again." He laughed it off, toasting his glass. "You've got yourself a deal, Mrs. Blake. Let's see what you can do." The drive home was quiet. Zariah stared out the window, the city lights sliding over her reflection like a silent promise. She wasn't angry anymore, not even hurt. She was awake. In the passenger seat, she began mentally listing what she'd need. A laptop, a name, a niche, a reason. She had all four. Darius hummed to the radio, tapping the steering wheel, oblivious to the empire he'd just dared her to build. That night, Zariah couldn't sleep. She sat up in bed with her notebook open, candle burning beside her. Her handwriting flowed fast and determined. She made lists, branding packages, small businesses she could pitch to, influencers she could collaborate with, women who'd been overlooked like her. She worked until dawn, until her eyes burned and her heart steadied. By sunrise, she had a full concept, a plan, and a new kind of energy in her veins. When Darius woke up, she was already in workout gear, making coffee, humming softly. "You're up early," he said, groggy. "New day," she said simply, handing him his mug. "I've got a business to start." He laughed, stretching. "Still going with that?" "Still going," she replied, her tone light, but her eyes said, "Watch me." That morning, Zariah drove downtown to a co-working space she'd found online. The receptionist, a bubbly woman named Mia, welcomed her warmly. "First day?" "Yes," Zariah said, smiling. "First day of something new." She sat by the window, opened her laptop, and created her business page. Zariah Media. Tagline: Your story. Your voice. Amplified. As she uploaded her first post, a wave of excitement washed over her. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Outside, the world moved as always, cars rushing, people scrolling, but inside that little office, a woman had just crossed the invisible line between doubted and unstoppable. She didn't need Darius's approval. She needed progress. That evening, Darius came home to find her typing on the couch, surrounded by notes and mood boards. He smirked. "Wow, you're really going for it." "Of course," she said lightly. "A bet's a bet." He chuckled. "All right, boss lady. Let's see how long this lasts." She smiled without looking up. "Long enough for you to regret saying that." That night, as he slept beside her, Zariah whispered into the dark, her voice steady and sure. "I'm going to make you eat those words." And for the first time in years, she slept soundly, not because she was comfortable, but because she finally knew exactly what she wanted. The next morning, the sunlight spilled through the sheer curtains of Zariah Blake's bedroom like liquid gold, gently warming the soft ivory sheets she had slept in restlessly. Her mind was still buzzing with the echoes of last night's fight, her husband, Marcus Blake, standing tall in his arrogance, that infuriating smirk tugging at his lips as he'd said, "You? Run a business? You'll fail in a week, Zariah." She could still hear the sound of his laughter as he'd walked away, leaving her clutching the edge of their kitchen counter in disbelief. The humiliation burned through her like fire, but beneath that fire, something else had awakened. Determination. Now, she sat up, her satin bonnet slightly off-kilter, eyes sharp as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her once hesitant gaze had changed. There was something in it now, a spark, a promise. "Watch me," she whispered to herself. "You're going to eat those words, Marcus Blake." She got out of bed, tied her robe tight, and padded across the hardwood floor. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee. Marcus was already downstairs, scrolling through his phone, probably checking his company's numbers. He barely looked up when she entered the kitchen. "Morning," he muttered, not even glancing at her. Zariah poured herself a cup of coffee, her movements slow and deliberate. "Morning," she said back, her tone calm but cool. "By the way, I've decided to start my business." That got his attention. His head snapped up, an incredulous laugh escaping him. "You're serious about that?" "Dead serious." He smirked, leaning back in his chair. "And what exactly will you be running, huh? A bake sale? A little hobby shop?" She met his eyes, her expression unreadable. "Interior design." He blinked. "Interior design. You haven't worked in years. Then it's about time I start." He laughed again, that same deep, mocking laugh that had crushed her spirit one too many times. "Zara, you can't just decide to start a company overnight. Do you even know how much goes into that? You'll be calling it quits before next Sunday." But Zara only smiled faintly, sipping her coffee. "We'll see." Later that day, she sat in her small home office, a space Marcus had once used as storage for old files and gym equipment. Now she was clearing it out, dragging boxes, sweeping floors and rearranging furniture with a quiet, unstoppable fire in her chest. Each movement felt like a declaration. Each breath felt like a step toward freedom. By the afternoon, the once dusty, cluttered room had transformed into something clean and minimal: a small desk, her old laptop, a few design magazines, and a large corkboard where she'd pinned her new dream in bold letters: Blake Designs, transforming spaces, empowering stories. She smiled at it, her heart swelling with pride. But the sound of Marcus's car pulling into the driveway made her stomach twist. When he walked in, sweaty from the gym, he took one look at the new setup and smirked. "Oh, you're really going through with it," he said, wiping his face with a towel. "Of course I am." He leaned against the doorway, that familiar condescending tilt in his voice. "Well, when you fail, don't say I didn't warn you." Zariah turned to him, crossing her arms. "And when I don't fail, don't say I didn't warn you." For a moment, they locked eyes, a silent battle of wills. He was used to having the last word, But this time, she didn't give him the satisfaction. She walked right past him, the faint scent of vanilla and jasmine following her like quiet confidence. That evening, Zariah sat on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through design portfolios, business registration forms, and color palettes. She took notes, watched tutorials, and built her vision one click at a time. Marcus passed behind her once, twice, pretending not to care, but his sideways glances betrayed him. He couldn't believe she was actually doing it. And when she received her very first call from a potential client, a woman named Mrs. Caldwell, who needed a living room remodel, Zariah almost dropped her phone. "Wait, you saw my ad?" she asked, blinking in disbelief. "Yes, dear, I saw your designs on social media. Very warm and modern. Can we meet tomorrow?" Zariah's throat tightened. "Of course, I'd love that." When she hung up, she just sat there for a moment, stunned, then slowly looked over at Marcus, who was lounging on the opposite couch, pretending to read his emails. He didn't look up, but she saw his jaw twitch. "Who was that?" he asked casually. "My first client," she said, her voice steady. He finally looked up, brow raised. "Already?" Zariah smiled. "Already." He scoffed, muttering something under his breath, but she could see the faint flicker of surprise in his eyes, the first crack in his confidence. She leaned back, crossed her legs, and sipped her tea. "Better get used to hearing that, Marcus," she said softly, "because it's just the beginning." The morning air shimmered with new energy as Zariah Blake stepped out of her front door, clutching her leather portfolio tightly against her chest. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. A soft golden glow stretched across the quiet suburb, and dew still clung to the grass like tiny diamonds. She felt the chill of dawn against her skin, but inside her blood was warm, alive, racing. Today was the day. Her first client meeting, her first test, her first step toward proving that Marcus Blake, the man who once claimed to love her yet laughed at her dreams, was dead wrong. She paused by her car, took a deep breath, and smiled faintly at her reflection in the window. She'd put effort into everything this morning. Her look, her pitch, her confidence. Her brown curls framed her glowing face perfectly, her soft makeup highlighting her caramel skin and sharp, determined eyes. She wore a white blouse tucked into tailored tan trousers, gold hoops in her ears, and confidence as her perfume. "Let's do this, Zariah," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel as she slid into the driver's seat. Later that morning, she arrived at the Caldwell estate, a tall, ivy-wrapped colonial home with white pillars and a driveway that looked like something straight out of an architectural magazine. Her heart pounded as she rang the doorbell, but she stood tall. A warm-faced woman in her 50s answered the door, her hair silver but her smile bright. "You must be Zariah." "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell. Thank you for seeing me. Please come in. I've been looking forward to this. I saw your ad online, and I just loved the modern Afro-chic style you described. So refreshing." Zariah exhaled a small sigh of relief as she stepped inside. The interior was grand but outdated. Old drapes, faded wallpaper, heavy furniture. It was exactly the kind of challenge she loved. She could already see what it could become. Light, airy, bold, elegant. Mrs. Caldwell led her into the living room and gestured for her to sit. "Now tell me what you see when you walk into this room." Zariah opened her portfolio, laying out sketches she'd done the night before. "I see potential. I see warmth. But I also see shadows that need lifting. I'd use a neutral palette to open the space. Cream walls, light oak floors, and woven accents to keep it grounded in texture. Maybe a touch of emerald for contrast. You have wonderful natural light, Mrs. Caldwell. It just needs a chance to breathe." Mrs. Caldwell's eyebrows lifted in pleasant surprise. "My goodness, that's exactly what I wanted. You've got quite the eye." Zariah smiled modestly, her heart thudding. "Thank you. I believe every home should feel like its owner, not just look good, but feel alive." For the next hour, they walked from room to room, laughing, planning, and imagining transformations. By the end, Mrs. Caldwell clapped her hands excitedly. "You know what, Zariah? You've convinced me. I'd love for you to handle the entire remodel." Zariah's breath caught. "You mean?" "I mean you're hired, dear." She blinked in disbelief for a moment, her lips parting in silent joy. Then, as reality sank in, she shook Mrs. Caldwell's hand firmly, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you. You won't regret this." "Oh, I know I won't," Mrs. Caldwell said warmly. "And please, don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. The world needs women like you." That evening, Zariah sat in her car outside her house, the signed contract in her hand. She stared at it for a long time, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. She'd done it. Her first client. Her first official project. But then her smile faded slightly as she glanced at the house through the windshield. Marcus's car was in the driveway. The lights were on, and she already knew what that meant. Another sarcastic remark. Another smirk. Another reminder that he didn't believe in her. Still, she gathered her things, squared her shoulders and walked in. Marcus was sitting on the couch, beer in hand, watching the news. He barely looked up when she entered. "You're back late. Business collapsing already?" She said nothing at first, just walked past him, opened her bag, and pulled out the folder. "Actually," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I just signed my first client." His laughter stopped mid-breath. "Wait, seriously?" She placed the folder on the coffee table, the contract visible, Mrs. Caldwell's signature glinting under the light. "Seriously?" He blinked, clearly taken aback, his jaw tightening. "Who'd even hire you this fast?" "A woman who saw potential in me before my own husband did." The words hit like a silent punch. For the first time, Marcus didn't have a comeback. He stared at her, his lips parting slightly as he processed the shift in the air. She wasn't the same woman who'd begged for his support months ago. She wasn't timid anymore. Zariah turned toward the stairs, removing her earrings and kicking off her heels. "Dinner's in the fridge," she said calmly, walking away. "I've got designs to draft." Marcus sat there, speechless, the faint sound of her heels fading down the hallway. And in that silence, for the first time, he felt it, the unsettling realization that he might be watching his wife evolve into someone far beyond his control. Later that night, Zariah sat by her desk in her new home office. The glow of her laptop bathed her face in soft light as she worked on her mood boards. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, sketching, researching, calculating. But beneath her focused calm was a thrill she couldn't contain. She remembered how he'd laughed, how he'd said she'd fail. And now, just one day later, she had a paying client. She leaned back in her chair, smiling to herself. "One down," she whispered. "A dozen more to go." Then she opened her notebook and wrote 3 words in big bold letters: "Make him regret." The following morning, the world seemed brighter. Not because the sun was any different, but because Zariah Blake was. She woke up before dawn, the soft hum of her alarm barely necessary. Her body felt charged, like her nerves were tuned to a new frequency. For the first time in months, she didn't dread the day. She owned it. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air as she moved through the house in her robe, her laptop open on the counter, music humming low in the background. She'd slept only 4 hours, but she didn't care. Her first client meeting had lit something inside her, something that Marcus had spent years trying to smother. Now that spark was burning into a flame. She sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through fabric swatches and design samples, making notes. She'd even created a simple brand logo last night, Blake Interiors, though she was seriously considering dropping his name soon. Behind her she heard the shuffle of feet. Marcus emerged, half asleep, scratching his head. He glanced at the flurry of sketches and papers scattered across the counter. "You're really going all in on this, huh?" he muttered, pouring himself coffee. Zariah didn't look up. That's what people do when they take something seriously. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Let's see how long it lasts." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She was done giving his words power. Instead, she slid her tablet closer and focused harder, her silence cutting sharper than any comeback could. After a few moments, Marcus leaned against the counter. "You know," he said, tone half curious, half condescending, "running a business isn't just mood boards and Pinterest. You've got to think about taxes, insurance, overhead." She turned slowly to face him, her eyes calm but razor sharp. "And clients. And results. You know, the things I'm already getting." He blinked, caught off guard. Zariah smiled, not arrogantly, but with the quiet assurance of someone who'd stopped asking for validation. Then she turned back to her laptop. "I'll be fine, Marcus. Don't worry about me." He grunted and walked away, but something in his posture had changed. His swagger wasn't as easy. He'd expected her to crumble under pressure, not glow under it. Later that day, Zariah drove to a local supplier to order materials for Mrs. Caldwell's project. The shop was buzzing. Rolls of fabric stacked like towers, paint swatches cascading across counters, workers carrying trays of samples. She moved through the aisles like a woman on a mission, touching fabrics, asking questions, comparing textures. It wasn't just shopping, it was claiming territory. A young attendant, clearly impressed, smiled as she approached. "You seem to know your stuff." "I've been designing spaces in my head for years." she replied with a warm smile. I'm just finally getting paid for it. The attendant laughed. Love that. You've got that boss energy. Zariah grinned, signing her order form. It's called finally knowing my worth. As she carried the swatches to her car, she felt the rhythm of momentum, the thrill of building something from scratch. Her car became her office, her phone her assistant, her vision her compass. By evening, she had finalized color palettes, drawn floor layouts, and even sent a follow-up proposal to a potential second client who'd reached out after seeing her work online. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and deeply fulfilling. When she arrived home that night, Marcus was on the phone in the living room. She could tell by his tone that he was talking about her. His voice low, words clipped. She thinks she's some kind of entrepreneur now, he muttered. You should see her, acting like she's a CEO or something. Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts. Zariah froze in the hallway, her hand still on the doorknob. For a brief moment, the old Zariah, the one who used to shrink, who used to internalize his words, almost resurfaced. But then she exhaled slowly, rolled her shoulders back, and walked into the room like she hadn't heard a thing. He ended the call abruptly when he saw her. Hey, long day? Productive, she replied simply, setting her things down. And I just got invited to submit a second proposal, so I guess people like what I'm doing. He forced a tight smile. That's good. Congrats. She nodded, not missing the faint irritation behind his politeness. Thanks. Then she walked past him, her head high, her perfume lingering like quiet defiance. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Caldwell's project was nearly halfway done, and Zariah's business was already buzzing. Word of mouth had spread faster than she expected. One client led to another, then another. Her inbox overflowed. Her phone rang nonstop. Each new message began the same way. Hi Zariah. I heard about your work from It was surreal. The same woman who used to doubt herself now had a waiting list. One afternoon she sat at her desk reviewing invoices when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? Hi, is this Zariah Blake? A man's voice asked hesitantly. Yes, this is she. Hi, my name's Jason Howard. I work with Caldwell Real Estate Group. Mrs. Caldwell mentioned you, and we're looking to remodel some of our model homes for a new development. She couldn't stop talking about your designs. Zariah blinked, sitting up straighter. Oh wow, that's incredible. I'd love to discuss the details. Great, Jason said warmly. I'll email you the project outline tonight. If all goes well, this could be an ongoing contract. After the call ended, Zariah just sat there, staring at the wall, her mind spinning. A development project that wasn't just a gig, that was a career shift. She laughed softly to herself, whispering, Marcus, you might want to start updating that bed of yours. That evening, Marcus came home to find Zariah in the kitchen, humming softly as she poured herself a glass of wine. He loosened his tie, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. You've been working non-stop lately. She turned, smiling faintly. You'd be surprised how much energy success gives you. He chuckled, but it didn't sound like humor, more like discomfort. You think you've made it just because some lady liked your designs? Zariah tilted her head, her expression serene. No, I think I'm making it because I stopped needing your permission. He froze, her words cutting clean through the air. She took a slow sip of her wine, then walked past him toward her office. By the way, she added casually, a developer called today. Might be a big project. I'll know by tomorrow. He didn't move, just watched her disappear down the hallway, her silhouette framed by the soft light from her desk lamp. And for the first time, Marcus realized something that made his stomach twist. He wasn't just losing control of her, he was losing relevance. The morning began with an email that would change everything. Zariah Blake sat at her desk, her coffee untouched, eyes glued to the screen. The subject line glowed like gold. Project confirmation, Caldwell Real Estate Development. Her heart thudded. She clicked it open, hands trembling slightly as she read the words. Congratulations, Miss Blake. After reviewing your proposal, we're pleased to inform you that Blake Interiors has been selected as the lead design consultant for our new housing development. We're excited to begin this partnership immediately. For a long second, Zariah just stared, then she broke into the biggest smile of her life. A laugh bubbled up from her chest, half disbelief, half triumph. She leaned back in her chair, covered her mouth and whispered, You did it, girl. Outside, the city was already awake, the distant hum of traffic, the sun casting soft orange streaks through her blinds. But inside that little home office, Zariah felt like the world had stopped spinning just to let her breathe this moment in. She didn't run downstairs to tell Marcus this time. No. Not after the smirks, the jabs, the dismissive laughs. This victory wasn't for him, it was for her. She instead grabbed her phone, opened a new email draft, and began responding to the company. Her tone professional, crisp, confident. Every word she typed sounded like a drumbeat of her own evolution. Zariah Blake, lead designer. Then she sent a message to Mrs. Caldwell. You believed in me before anyone else did. Thank you. I'll make sure this project makes you proud. Minutes later, Mrs. Caldwell replied with a single line that made her chest tighten with warmth. I already am proud of you, dear. By midday, she was already at work. Sample boards, design outlines, project mock-ups. She met with suppliers, arranged consultations, and made calls that stretched into the afternoon. Everywhere she went, people looked at her differently now. The woman who once hesitated to introduce herself as a business owner was suddenly being greeted with, "Ah, Ms. Blake, we've been expecting you." She didn't just walk into rooms anymore, she arrived. Her phone buzzed constantly, new clients, new offers, new opportunities. At one point she looked at the screen and laughed under her breath, because there it was, Marcus's name flashing across her phone. She debated answering. Then, with a soft smirk, she picked up. Hey, she said casually, pretending to be busy flipping through papers. You sound busy, he said after a pause. I am. Just got off a call with a real estate firm. He sounded uncertain, caught between curiosity and discomfort. So, things are going well. Better than well, she replied smoothly. I just landed a contract worth more than your car. Silence. Then, awkwardly, that's great. Congratulations. She smiled faintly. Thanks, Marcus. Guess I didn't fail in a week after all. Click. She ended the call before he could respond. That evening, when Marcus came home, she was sitting on the couch with her laptop, surrounded by design boards. The glow of the screen lit her face like firelight, confident, focused, unstoppable. Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching her. She wasn't the same woman he'd once teased for dreaming too big. There was something untouchable about her now, a quiet power that made him uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. You're really into this, huh? Zariah looked up, eyes calm but glinting. Into my success? Yeah, kind of addictive. He forced a chuckle, trying to act unbothered. I mean, that's good. Just, don't burn yourself out, all right? You're not used to this kind of pressure. Oh, I'm used to pressure, she said smoothly. I just finally stopped letting it crush me. He opened his mouth but found no words. So instead, he muttered, well, I hope this project's worth all the stress. Zariah leaned back, her smile small but knowing. It is, because it's mine. 2 weeks later, her calendar was overflowing. Meetings, supplier visits, client follow-ups. Her name was on people's lips in the city's design circles. Even local magazines were starting to take notice. But the real twist came one morning, when her phone rang. A new number. Hello, this is Zariah. Good morning, Ms. Blake. I'm calling from Caldwell Real Estate. We'd like to discuss some logistics for the development's office interiors. The person handling those approvals is actually one of your husband's colleagues, Marcus Blake. Her pen froze in her hand. For a second, she almost laughed. The irony was too perfect. Oh really? She said, her tone sugar-sweet. That'll make things convenient. The same place he'd once strutted into every morning in pressed suits and smug confidence. But today, the energy had shifted, and not in his favor. Heads turned as she entered, not just because she looked stunning, but because she carried herself like someone who belonged. She wore a fitted black blazer, gold earrings, and her hair pulled into a sleek bun. Her heels clicked with purpose across the polished floor. She approached the reception desk, her voice calm and professional. Good afternoon. I'm here for the Caldwell project meeting, Zariah Blake. The receptionist smiled brightly. Of course, they're expecting you. Conference room 3B. Marcus was already in the room when she walked in, laughing with his coworkers. But the moment he saw her, the laughter died in his throat. Zariah? He asked, eyes wide. Good afternoon, she said evenly, setting down her portfolio. I'm here as lead design consultant for the Caldwell development. I believe we'll be working together. The room went silent for a beat. Then one of his colleagues, a tall man in a navy suit, broke the tension. Ah, Miss Blake, we've heard great things. Your designs are brilliant. Pleasure to finally meet you in person. Zariah smiled gracefully. Thank you. The pleasure's mine. She didn't even glance at Marcus as she sat down, calm, composed, in control. The meeting went smoothly. She presented her concepts, fielded questions, and left everyone impressed. Even Marcus's boss leaned forward halfway through and said, "We're lucky to have you on board, Ms. Blake. You bring a fresh perspective." When it ended, Marcus stayed seated, staring at her in disbelief as everyone left. Finally, he muttered, "So this is what you've been up to." "This," she said softly, gathering her papers, "is what happens when you underestimate someone who knows her worth." She turned to leave, but paused by the door, glancing back over her shoulder. "Oh, and Marcus?" He looked up. "Next time you make a bet, make sure you can afford to lose." And with that, she walked out, her heels clicking in rhythm to the quiet collapse of his pride. By the time the calendar turned to December, the air itself seemed to hum with the kind of quiet satisfaction only hard work and a little revenge could bring. Zariah Blake had turned the small spare room that once held her husband's golf trophies into a full-fledged office, sleek, vibrant, and filled with the soft buzz of success. A modern glass desk, a wall of motivational quotes, and the constant ping of incoming client messages now filled the space that used to mock her ambitions. Across the hall, Malik's old office, the one he once guarded like a throne room, now stood empty. He had no choice. The company he worked for had downsized, and when his supervisor called one morning with an opportunity, a partnership project with Blake Creative Agency, Malik's face went pale. He hadn't realized that the Blake on the company's new collaboration list was his wife. And Zariah knew exactly how to handle this. The following Monday, the door opened and Malik walked in, dressed in his favorite navy suit, confidence half forced, half pleading. He stood there awkwardly, clutching a briefcase that now looked out of place in a room full of women typing efficiently on silver laptops. Zariah didn't look up immediately. She let him stand there, waiting, just as she had waited for his approval months ago. The silence was thick, but she wasn't cruel. No, she was strategic. When she finally looked up, her lips curved into that calm, composed smile that could slice through steel. "Mr. Blake," she said sweetly, emphasizing the Mr., not the husband. "You're here for the client coordination role, I presume?" His throat tightened. "Zariah, we don't need to do this." "Oh, we do," she replied, eyes glinting like glass under sunlight. "It's just business." The room seemed to shrink around them. Her assistant, a sharp young woman named Kiara, glanced curiously before slipping out, closing the door behind her. Malik ran a hand over his chin, searching for words, pride fighting the reality of his position. He'd lost his job, the bills had piled up, and the company that could save his finances, his last resort, belonged to his wife, the same woman he had once told would fail in a week. Zariah leaned back, her fingers intertwined. "You remember when you told me that, don't you?" she asked softly, as if recalling a fond memory. "You said, you'll come running back when it gets too hard." He looked away, shame creeping up his neck. "Well," she continued, standing up gracefully, "it did get hard, and I didn't run back. I ran forward." There was no gloating in her tone, only truth. Power didn't always need to roar. Sometimes it just needed to stand tall. After a tense pause, she picked up a folder from her desk and handed it to him. "Here's your assignment, Mr. Blake. You'll be assisting with our logistics and partnerships. You'll report directly to me." The weight of those words hit him square in the chest. He took the file silently, fingers trembling just a little. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he muttered. Zariah smiled faintly. "No," she said. "I'm proud of this." Then with a tilt of her head she added, "But you can take your time adjusting to calling me boss." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was a quiet reckoning. By the next week, Malik was working in her office every day. Watching her manage her growing team, seeing her confidence in motion, it humbled him. Clients respected her, her staff adored her, and for the first time, he saw the woman he'd underestimated as something far greater than he'd ever imagined. And one afternoon, as he watched her close another deal, her laughter echoing through the space that once doubted her, Malik finally understood. Zariah Blake hadn't just built a business. She had built herself, and he was now working for the woman he once thought couldn't do it. When their eyes met from across the office, she didn't gloat. She simply gave him a knowing smile, calm, powerful, and radiant. The kind of smile that said, "I told you so, but I don't have to say it." The music swelled softly in the background, an echo of victory, grace, and the quiet power of a woman who bet on herself and won.